Hey guys, AY Militaria here. So recently I saw a couple of really interesting videos on YouTube on World War I era German banknotes. So I thought I might as well do a video of some of my banknotes as sort of a response to that video. And for those of you who don't know, one of my main areas of collecting is World War II era Chinese militaria. So I thought might as well do a video on banknotes from that era, from China. And what you see here, the customs gold unit banknotes, are actually one of my favorite series from that time period because they actually accurately reflect the changes and the progression of the political and economic situation in China from the early 30s up to the late 40s. So without further ado, let's begin. So the customs gold unit banknotes were first commissioned by the Republic of China in either January or February of 1930. Sources vary, but fairly certain that's going to be within the first 2 months of 1930. And these were supposed to be used to pay customs tax and duties. So up until this period, taxes and duties were paid to the Chinese customs in the form of silver. However, the deflation of silver prices in 1929 had affected the revenue that the customs were generating from these taxes that people were paying them. So as a result, in early 1930, it was decided to switch to a form of currency that was backed by gold, hence the commissioning of these customs gold units. So the gold units were intended to be backed by gold, with one equaling just over 0.6 grams of gold, or exactly 0.4 US dollars. So what set these banknotes apart from other Chinese banknotes of the era was that these customs gold units, or CGUs, were actually fixed to the US dollar instead of the Chinese yuan, which made it more stable compared to other forms of Chinese currency. This was done most likely to make exchanges between foreign currency and CGUs easier, because it's probably going to be mainly foreigners who will be paying customs duties when entering China. The American Banknote Company was tasked with printing the CGU banknotes in denominations of 0.1, 0.2, 1, 5, and 10 units, with the notes entering circulation in May of 1931. And for 4 years, these banknotes were only used to pay custom taxes and nothing else. So they did what they were meant to do. And the number of CGU banknotes in circulation were relatively small due to the fact that they couldn't really be used in general circulation and can only be used to pay customs duties. But the economic situation of 1939 had caused a rapid hyperinflation in China, and as a result forced the Chinese government to abandon its old banknotes and introduce a new series that were not backed by silver. This new series was known as the CNC, or the Chinese National Yuan, also known as the legal yuan. This is a very late series legal yuan banknote from 1945, as you can see here. But the Chinese customs gold units were actually relatively unaffected by the earlier hyperinflation of the economy, as they were tied to the US dollar and not to the Chinese yuan, which made them actually quite stable. So normally in situations like this, in modern times, people might decide to go ahead and stack silver or invest in gold. But what happened with the 1935 currency reform in China was that the private ownership of silver was banned outright, and people started noticing the value in CGUs, although officially it was still to be used in the payment of customs duties and taxes and nothing else. However, hyperinflation continued to be a problem, and the new legal yuan, or the CNC, continued to depreciate in value. And the start of the Second Sino-Japanese War really did nothing to help it, as the government continued to print out more money. But the CGU, still fixed to the US dollar, remained strong and was still, for the most part, protected. In fact, it was even said that during the war, the famous Flying Tigers, or officially known as the American Volunteer Group, were actually paid in gold units instead of the Chinese yuan, due to the fact that they were fixed to the US dollar, and they were protected from hyperinflation. So the next major change for the customs gold units would occur in April of 1942. The Republic of China government, noticing that the CGUs were relatively unaffected by the situation, decided to fix their circulating yuan to it at a conversion rate of 1 CGU to 20 yuan, and as well released the CGUs into general circulation. At the same time, higher denomination banknotes were introduced in the form of 20 and 50 CGUs. So this was done in an attempt to slow down the hyperinflation by introducing currency tied to gold, and technically also allowed the government to issue even more currency, which would of course make the matter worse. So by converting the CGUs into general circulating currency and tying it to their yuan, the Republic of China government had essentially removed the protection that the CGUs had, and it quickly started to depreciate in value and was caught up in the hyperinflation of the economy. This is evident by the fact that by January 16th of 1947, the 250 and 500 gold unit banknotes were introduced. By the end of that year, in December, the highest denomination CGU banknotes were now at 1,000, 2,000, and 5,000. And half a year later, in July of 1948, the highest denomination banknotes had already risen to an astounding 250,000 gold units. So by this point, the CGU, along with the Chinese yuan, was hopelessly lost in the hyperinflation, and of course the government knew it. So on August 19th of 1948, the Republic of China government once again announced the abolishing of the old currency, this time including the CGUs, and the introduction of a new yuan known as the gold yuan. And the conversion rate between CGUs and the new gold yuan was going to be at 150,000 CGUs to 1 yuan. And thus, on the 21st of November 1948, the CGUs were withdrawn from circulation and stopped being legal tender, marking an end to this 17 years old series of banknotes. And on a side note, the ending for the gold yuan wasn't much better either. It was not protected from the hyperinflation and similarly rapidly depreciated in value. It was in use for less than a year before being scrapped due to the People's Republic of China winning the Civil War and taking over, and at the same time introducing their own currency. All right, so now on to the actual review of the items. I have two banknotes here. This is a 1 CGU banknote from the earlier issues, and this is a 1942 era, give or take, issue of the 50 CGU banknotes. So on the front, very similar, the portrait of Sun Yat-sen, the founder of the Republic. At the top, being read from right to left, as Chinese was back then. This is the Bank of China, Shanghai, which was the place of issue. And the corners, including in the middle here, you have the denomination. At the bottom, you have the stamps of the bank managers and the serial number of the bill. And this is very similar for the 1 CGU banknotes, with the exception of the serial number, which is now located on the back. So, very interesting thing to note here. This is the date. This would be the 19th year of the Republic. So that would be 1930 when this was commissioned. But as we know, the 50 CGU banknote was introduced in 1942, and these started circulating in 1931. So at the bottom here, that would be the commissioning date. Another very interesting thing to note here at the very bottom, I'm not sure if you could see that, in very faint Chinese characters, that means that's the Chinese name for the American Banknote Company, which was tasked with printing these notes. At the back here, you're going to have them in English. So 50 customs gold units, Shanghai 1930 American Banknote Company. Signature of the general manager and the assistant general manager. And right here is the image of the Shanghai Customs House, because this is originally intended for payment to Chinese customs. Now, each denomination was actually color-coded. So the 50 is actually in, not sure if you could see this, but it's actually in a purplish color. And the 1 CGU banknote, although worn, the color is not only from circulating and being worn, it was actually originally supposed to be of a yellowish tint. And at the back here, same thing. Arabic numerals at the corners, one in the middle with English, and the signatures of the bank managers at the bottom, image of the Shanghai Customs House. Oh, and something interesting to note, this is currently still in Shanghai. It was not demolished. It was not lost during war. And it should, if I remember correctly, still be the largest clock in all of Asia. So it's actually quite amazing if you think about that. It's a very historical building. So that's pretty much it for these customs gold unit banknotes. They're very simple in design. There's none of the very interesting and elaborate artwork that we see like on the World War I era German banknotes, so definitely not as visually appealing. One interesting fact is that this is actually vertical instead of horizontal like other Chinese banknotes at the time. And we actually don't see a lot of vertical banknotes, so one of the few. And what I like about this is mainly the history behind it. I find the history actually very fascinating, and the fact that by understanding the history behind the CGUs, you can actually gain a very accurate understanding of the Chinese economic situation and the political situation and the progression from the initial rise to the eventual downfall. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed my video and hope you found it informative. And I will try my best to make more videos like this in the future. And I hope to see you guys next time.